This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The Chinese president calls for strengthening economic and trade cooperation at the opening of a key expo with ASEAN. Rescue operations continue in Zimbabwe after a mine collapse buried dozens. And Ethiopian refugees fleeing unrest in Tigray now filling Sudan camps beyond capacity. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. Zimbabwe begins repossessing underutilized farms and withdrawing land from multiple farm owners. And in sports, two of Africa's biggest clubs face each other in the finals of the African Champions League. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. I'm Richard Nta. So good to have you with us. We begin in South China's Nanning, where a large trade fair opened this morning. Chinese President Xi Jinping addressed the opening of the China-ASEAN Expo and the China-ASEAN Business and Investment Summit via video link. ASEAN stands for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which has 10 member states. The focus of this year's expo is on cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative and the digital economy. President Xi reviewed bilateral efforts in fighting COVID-19 and proposed more measures to deepen ties with ASEAN to cope with international challenges. He called for more cooperation to ensure that member states are able to manage public health emergencies. He also praised China-ASEAN cooperation.
I propose to build the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road with ASEAN countries in 2013 and work together to build a closer China-ASEAN community with a shared future. During the past 7 years, China-ASEAN ties have become the most successful and vibrant model for cooperation in the Asia-Pacific, as well as a vivid example of a community of shared future for mankind.
This year marks the 10th anniversary of the China-ASEAN Free Trade Area. Gao Yiming has more on what it is and its growth.
Covering 1.9 billion people, the China-ASEAN Free Trade Area is the world's largest free trade area among developing countries. Established in 2010, it aims to promote the liberalization and facilitation of trade and investment in Southeast Asian nations. Since its formation, the industrial chain and value chain have been deeply integrated, and bilateral trade has grown rapidly. The total trade volume has doubled from $292 billion in 2010 to over $600 billion in 2019. And China has been ASEAN's largest trading partner since the establishment of the Free Trade Area. Under the framework, tariffs have been reduced to zero on more than 90% of trade products, benefiting a vast number of consumers and attracting many Southeast Asian companies to explore the Chinese market. 2020 has seen a decrease in international trade due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But against this backdrop, China and ASEAN have maintained trade and economic cooperation. The total trade volume between China and ASEAN nations increased nearly 4% in the first 8 months of this year, reaching over $416 billion. That accounts for nearly 15% of China's total foreign trade volume. And ASEAN has surpassed the European Union to become China's top trading partner for the first time. Meanwhile, China's investment in the region is also booming. In the first half of this year, investment reached over $6 billion, increasing more than 53% since last year. It makes up 76% of China's investment in economies related to the Belt and Road Initiative. And ASEAN's paid-in investment in China surged by nearly 6% from the previous year. In addition to growing trade volume and investment, China and ASEAN have had closer cooperation in the digital economy and made steady progress in regional economic cooperation. In order to better implement the Belt and Road Initiative, China is also promoting cooperation with ASEAN countries by developing sub-regional collaboration systems, including Panbeibu Gulf cooperation with nations in Southeast Asia, and the China-Indochina Peninsula Economic Corridor. Gao Yiming, CGTN.
Zimbabwe, where search and rescue operations have been underway for around 40 miners trapped underground at a mine in Bindura town. The town is located some 70 kilometers from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. 6 miners have so far been pulled out of the mine after it collapsed on Wednesday. The Ministry of Mines has mobilized its engineering department and equipment from large mining companies to carry out the search. The rescue efforts are being slowed down by underground water and disrupted by other miners attempting to get into the shaft. Mining associations are engaging government to help to curb such accidents. 2 other incidents of trapped miners have been reported during the month of November alone.
I am waiting for my brother's son who is trapped underground, and we were told about this, but since then we have not been told anything. The rescue team is assisting, but I think they're not that effective, and I believe if there are any other miners underground, I doubt they will be retrieved alive.
We understand there were some organized mining syndicates who were mining here, and after blasting, maybe they use rudimentary methods. After blasting some of the pillars, that's when the whole mine collapsed. The numbers are not yet established. That's why we want to start with this dewatering process to ensure that all the other processes can then follow.
In Ethiopia, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has announced a final offensive in Tigray to capture the regional capital, Mekelle. The UN Refugee Agency reported that over 40,000 Ethiopians have crossed into neighboring Sudan to seek shelter. In a remote part of Sudan, one camp is already over capacity. Rakoba camp was meant to house 5,000 refugees, but has almost doubled that capacity. More refugees are arriving daily from across the border, fleeing a military offensive in Tigray that began on November the 4th. The UN estimates that up to 200,000 people could arrive in the next 6 months. The UNHCR has been warning of a full-scale humanitarian crisis.
Catering for over 9,000 people in the camp, hot meal is a challenge. We cannot keep social distancing here in the camp. It is really challenging among the several issues and need that are growing because the number is growing. Today we are receiving a convoy of 1,000 arriving in the camp, and shelter is one of the biggest challenges that we have at the moment. This camp is almost 2 weeks old. It is challenging in Sudan because of fuel shortage, economic situation, and honestly the partners, including UNHCR and our allies, including WFP and all of us, it is challenging us to provide, shelter materials, food, to get them quickly.
Let's get the latest on the Tigray unrest. We are joined live by CGTN's Gerum Chala, who is in Addis Ababa. Gerum, the federal government began what it called the final offensive yesterday. What more can you tell us about that?
Richard, it's been more than 24 hours since the Ethiopian National Defense Force have been instructed to start what is known as a final assault against the Special Force of Tigray Regional State after the 72 hours ultimatum were concluded. Yesterday, the Prime Minister said that this job is going to be concluded with a full precaution not to affect civilians and also important infrastructures of the community. Now, although information is so scarce at the moment from the war front, we hear that the Ethiopian National Defense Force are engaging continuously against the Special Force in the Tigray Regional State and the militia there. And on the other side, the Tigray Regional State is also claiming that it is gaining some kind of victory in different war fronts, small places as well. But this cannot be verified. As we've been saying, information is still hard to gain from that part of the country as communication remains cut off. So in general terms, Richard, war has continued in this final assault, and the Prime Minister is promising that this will be concluded as soon as possible.
Well, Jerome, like you said, war is continuing. That's not good news. But what about the mediation efforts by the AU? Anything on that front?
Well, many believe, especially those from outside of the country, including the African Union, that is, that this situation in the country, as it has a potential of affecting even the Eastern Africa region, should be resolved through dialogue, peaceful means, that is, than the ongoing war situation. And that's why the African Union has already nominated, as we've been saying so far, three African personalities, former heads of state, to speak to Ethiopian authorities and also those in the northern part of the country. The Prime Minister is expected to speak to these people as soon as possible. But I've been talking to Ethiopian ministers earlier today. If there is a change of heart when it comes to any dialogue that could possibly begin in the next few days. Richard, however, the Ethiopian government stance remains strong and one. They're saying that this is an internal matter. The subnational entity should be disarmed, and there won't be any negotiation, any dialogue until this is resolved through the way that it has already started. So there is no change of heart from the Ethiopian government side, and the dialogue looks like it's far away for now, Richard. The humanitarian situation also looks like getting a bit dire, as Ethiopian authorities are also promising that they are trying to provide whatever they can for the people who are being affected by this conflict situation, Richard.
Yeah, Rumchala, let's leave it there for now. Thanks for keeping a close eye on that story. We appreciate your update and report. Let's move along. Vaccinations against COVID-19 in Africa might not start until the second quarter of next year, according to the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Now, this comes amid warnings that Africa is experiencing the second wave of infections. Africa accounts for around 2 million of the more than 60 million confirmed cases across the world. Africa CDC officials said clinical vaccine trials look promising, but the continent may struggle with the rolling out of the vaccine. The head of the Africa CDC said about 1.5 billion doses will be required to reach the 60% coverage needed for herd immunity. All right, moving on. Turkish officials say the country has inked a deal to buy a large amount of COVID-19 vaccines from a Chinese firm, Sinovac. Now, that's as Turkey reported a record number of coronavirus deaths for a fourth consecutive day, with over 170 fatalities. Now, on Thursday, that was reported, officials have stressed that citizens should follow newly imposed restrictions to help curb infections. CGTN's Michael Bardavid has more. Let's take a look.
Turkey is one of the 3 countries conducting clinical trials of Sinovac, the experimental Chinese coronavirus vaccine. Hospitals in Turkey are carrying out the phase 3 trials of the vaccine. So far, doctors have stressed the results are positive. Turkish officials expect to administer this vaccine by the end of the year.
Our talks with Sinovac continue for the inactivated vaccine. We've signed a contract for 50 million doses of vaccines to be delivered in the months of December, January and February if there is no problem.
Officials had stressed that Turkey would be given priority to purchase Sinovac because the country participated in the clinical trials of the vaccine. As part of the trial, Turkey has also started to vaccinate non-medical volunteers. About 13,000 volunteers will be participating. Starting in September, this vaccine was given to around 1,200 health workers. The deal to purchase 50 million doses has become even more significant for Turkey as the country is facing a surge in COVID-19 cases. Turkish Health Minister Fahrettin Koca stated the cities of Istanbul and Izmir are at the peaks of a third wave of the coronavirus. Turkey recently imposed new restrictions, including partial lockdowns over the weekends. I'm Michal Bardavit for CGTN in Istanbul.
Supporters of Burkina Faso's President Roch Kabore have been celebrating his re-election victory. The incumbent was provisionally declared winner of the 22nd of November elections on Thursday. Now, according to the Electoral Commission, he garnered 58% of the vote. His 2 closest rivals, Zefrin Diabre and Eddie Kamboigo, got about 12 and 15% of the vote, respectively.
These have been the scenes across Burkina Faso as news spread that the incumbent Roch Kabore has won re-election.
Après cette proclamation,
Mr. Kabore Roche Christian Mark, with 57.87% of the votes, is provisionally declared elected after the first round as President of Burkina Faso in the 22nd November election.
Dès le premier tour, comme président du Faso.
C'est avec humilité et une grande émotion.
It is with great humility and emotion that I welcome the provisional results announced by the National Independence Electoral Commission regarding the November 22nd elections. First of all, I wish to pass my gratitude to the people of Burkina Faso in the country as well as in the diaspora for their commitment and their faith in democracy.
I'm very happy with what happened from the beginning of the campaign until this time, and I'm very happy with it being a knockout win in the first round.
We hope that the coming term will go smoothly and that everyone will work with our president.
That too is President Kabore's message to the people of Burkina Faso.
Je voudrais les féliciter de leur participation.
I would also like to congratulate them on their involvement, their commitment across the whole national territory, and the fair play shown throughout the campaign. Of course, in all elections, there are winners and losers. But that does not detract us from the fact that we are all Burkinabe who aspire to build together a better Burkina Faso for the whole of the population.
The Electoral Commission is expected to release final results on Saturday. The results must then be verified by the Constitutional Court. But until then, it's all song and dance from Kabore's supporters. Chamwono, CGTN.
The news continues on Africa Live. We will see you on the other side of the break with more news. Here are the headlines. A row rages in Tunisia over waste sent in from Italy. And Uganda gets a pair of tigers from South Africa.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to Africa Live. We appreciate your company. Well, for the sixth consecutive year, Nigeria has been ranked the third most terrorized country in the world, despite deaths in terrorist incidents falling in 2019. Now, this is according to a latest report by the Global Terrorism Index. Correspondent Philly Haza brings us more from Abuja, Nigeria's capital.
The Global Terrorism Report ranks Nigeria third after Afghanistan and Iraq among countries witnessing the most violence by terrorists. Nigeria has remained in third position since 2011 and has been battling to end insurgency for over 10 years. However, it says total deaths from terrorism in Nigeria reduced by 39% in 2019 when compared to the previous year and hitting the lowest level since 2011. GTI attributes the decline in terrorism deaths and incidents in the country to a reduction in violence from insurgents and herdsmen. The report reveals that suicide bombing by militant group Boko Haram also fell significantly in 2019, but that doesn't mean the problem is going away.
Whereas you've seen a reduction in deaths, we have also seen an increase in casualties recorded by the security forces that are in the theater of war trying to combat Boko Haram. So it is not so much of the effort of the government per se, It's just a change in strategy, because if you look at the activities of killer headsmen, they are unrelenting. In fact, it has become worse in recent times.
And that's one of the key points in the report, the fact that there is now a shift in ISIL-related attacks away from the Middle East to sub-Saharan Africa. It says 41% of all ISIL-related attacks worldwide in 2019 occurred in sub-Saharan Africa, including in Nigeria. And experts say the government may need to do more to win the war on insurgency.
Now, Nigeria's armed forces and international security agencies as well are severely overwhelmed. Latest statistics showed that all services under arms in Nigeria are less than 700,000. And we're talking about a population of 200 million. We're talking about a landmass of over 900,000 square kilometers. And so this is grossly inadequate. It actually falls below the threshold of international standards for internal security of any nation. And so a lot more needs to be done.
President Muhammadu Buhari last month renewed his commitment of ending insurgency, banditry, and other forms of criminality across the country before the end of his administration in 2023. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Over to Tunisia now, where the importation of waste from Italy has been dubbed ecological terrorism by the Green Tunisia Network. The group of NGOs has filed a complaint to the Judicial Counterterrorism Division. The case sparked nationwide outrage and resulted in the dismissal of the head of the National Waste Management Agency. CGTN's Adnan Shawashi reports.
The Green Tunisia Network, which brings together more than 100 active NGOs, threatened to file a complaint before the International Court of Justice and the European Court of Human Rights in the case of waste imported from Italy.
This is a national security issue. The Italian state has violated the sovereignty of Tunisia's national territory, given that this activity is harmful to the environment and human health.
Environmental experts explain that the Tunisian company annually imports nearly 120,000 tons of waste from Italy and receives 48 euros for each ton. Activists accuse the Environment Department, as well as the Italian and the Tunisian companies, of ecological terrorism.
The Tunisian company which is involved in this scandal did not act on its own. It has Italian partners and Tunisian state officials who turned a blind eye to this unprecedented environmental catastrophe. All people who authorize the import of waste from Italy will be held to account.
The Minister of Environment and Local Affairs informed the head of state that he ordered an investigation into the scandal. Authorities declared that 70 containers of waste have been sealed, pending the return to Italy, while 212 containers are still at the port of Sousse.
The export from the port in Italy was made with fake documents because the Tunisian importing company declared the containers were full of recyclable plastic waste, which is not true. The investigation is underway. The ministry did not grant any authorization. It will take all appropriate legal measures to address this kind of abuse.
Tunisia is a signatory to several international waste conventions. There are mainly the Basel Convention on the Control of Transboundary Movements of Hazardous Wastes and their Disposal, and the Bamako Convention on the Ban on the Import into Africa of Hazardous Wastes and on the Control of Transboundary Movements and Management of Hazardous Wastes within Africa.
The Tunisian law clearly regulates the field of waste disposal. Therefore, it is strictly prohibited to import hazardous waste into the North African state. Environmental activists hope that the case will not be treated and classified as an ordinary customs offense. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, let's turn our attention to Uganda, where the country has unveiled a pair of tigers from South Africa at a zoo in Entebbe. The 2- and 3-month-old tigers were brought from the Mystic Monkeys and Feathers Zoo in South Africa in exchange for 25 monkeys from Uganda. Isabel Nakiria reports.
Uganda's Entebbe Zoo has received the largest member of the cat family. The male and female Bengal tigers arrived in the country at the beginning of the lockdown in March and went through a 90 days quarantine at the vet hospital in Entebbe. They've now finally been unveiled. The government-owned wildlife center closed its doors to tourists to reduce the spread of COVID-19, cutting off a major source of funds. Uganda has now eased restrictions, but visitor numbers are still low. Caretakers here hope the tigers will improve their visitor numbers and incomes.
It is a new normal where we need to think outside the box. How do we remain afloat as a going concern, yet we have challenges amidst us? This is one of the innovations that UEC has brought on board, that we can have a new product that is going to be unveiled so that Ugandans can come and other visitors, non-Ugandans.
Tigers naturally live in Asia. They do not live in the wild in Africa, but some zoos are breeding them. The Entebbe Zoo says having tigers here is a chance for visitors to see them up close for the first time. Study groups will also get to learn more about the tigers as a new wildlife attraction in the country. The zoo had tigers 6 decades ago, but they died after growing old. Uganda's Wildlife Center says the Bengal tigers are already adjusting well to the temperatures here.
They exist like in a range of habitats: rainforest, mangrove swamps, in some deserts, somewhere even in Russia they exist where there's snow. So the range is so big for them. And like in Africa, usually our temperatures don't go so high, they don't go so low. So they really can exist here.
The World Wildlife Fund says over the last century, species of tigers have dwindled from 9 to 6. Zookeepers here say the Bengal species that Uganda now has needs to be conserved to stop its extinction. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Entebbe, Uganda.
Meanwhile, Egypt has been restoring monuments in Cairo's necropolis, also known as the City of the Dead. The cemetery area that dates back about 700 years from the Islamic era of Mamluks. It stretches about 6.5 kilometers in the capital. It has its own distinct burials as well as architecture and monuments. Yasser Hakim has the detail. Let's take a look.
Cemeteries in Egypt are a unique concept. It's a house-like structure with several coffins where the bodies of all the family are buried together, as if they are lying at home. This is the cemetery of the late Saad Zaghloul, a popular statesman and prime minister in 1924. Cairo necropolis is one of the largest and oldest in the country. It's not just a cemetery, there are ancient Islamic monuments inside.
Ibn Burkuk, the Islamic ruler, is the first to build a small cemetery here with its own dome in the year 1400. It was meant for his 2 wives. Since then, for centuries, this location expanded as more people were being buried in this vast, once empty desert area. The most famous monument is Qaitbay Bey Dome, the tomb of the ever-loved Prince Qaitbay Bey, an Islamic ruler from the 14th century. He's also important because he left behind a heritage of Islamic architecture. There are more than 36 rare monuments from the ruler's era inside the necropolis.
Being neglected for decades, these cemeteries became inhabited with homeless people. It's been the focus of many movies that reflect how some people raised their families in these tombs. Others opened workshops or businesses inside. Now the government is reviving the site. The aim is to restore it to be a flourishing district and a touristic destination.
It is part of a comprehensive plan to revive the 4 ancient capitals of Egypt throughout history, including this necropolis at the Citadel. Besides the restoration, tourists will find bazaars and shops selling costumes and souvenirs as they walk inside the necropolis. It will become a vibrant area.
To ensure sustainable development, the government is allowing the predominantly poor inhabitants to work in the rebuilding process or establish businesses that serve the touristic purposes. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Our coverage continues on Africa Live. We've got your business news coming up next. Here's a look at the headlines. Zimbabwe begins repossessing underutilized farms and withdrawing land from multiple farm owners. Trucks queue for kilometers at the Kenya-Uganda border as delays remain unresolved.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. A digital forum is currently underway in the Senegalese capital of Dakar. The two-day event is seen as a platform for promoting innovative technological solutions. It also looks to encourage and aid innovative young people. 3 young Senegalese were recognized as innovative problem solvers. The event brings together hundreds of digital experts. It is organized by the Ministry of Digital Economy and Telecommunications, chaired by Senegalese President Macky Sall.
Facing the pandemic and its impacts, the best of digital technology has manifested itself by supporting health, education, and many other activities, in particular through teleworking. This also illustrates the relevance of the theme of this edition: digital technology in the service of pandemic management and economic recovery.
In Zimbabwe, the government has begun repossessing underutilized farms and withdrawing land from multiple farm owners as it aims to enhance food security. This follows a government plan to implement the one-man, one-farm policy that seeks to ensure landless Zimbabweans can be allocated land. CGTN's Farai Mwakatuya has more on that report.
Vast swaths of farmland parceled out to beneficiaries during the 2000s have been lying idle, reducing agricultural production and diminishing the important sector's contribution to the economy. The government has begun repossessing those farms from unproductive, absentee or multiple owners and will allocate them to thousands of people on a lengthy waiting list at the land's office.
If it is done in the sense and in the light of trying to improve food security or improve production, then the process is viewed as a very noble one by our organization, and we are fully behind such a development. There has to be some rethinking in terms of how we can make the land more productive. And even if it means revisiting some of the processes, so be it, because what we need to do is to ensure that land becomes productive.
Agricultural production has been hampered since 2000 due to contestations over the land grabs, which has seen some resettled farmers failing to access crucial finance. Farmers who are constrained by a lack of capital are allowed to engage in joint ventures with investors to get their operations up and running. However, in new guidelines issued by government, those sort of partnerships now need to be approved by the Ministry of Agriculture. Stakeholders insist the reallocation must be backed by attractive investment policies.
If you do not provide the environment policy and otherwise, if you don't provide that environment for conducive, environment which is conducive for production and productivity to kick in, you then end up having these reverse issues, the negatives, where land lies idle, where people grab land from each other, disputes all over, and also you have a limit to which you can finance your operations, be it at government level or even at an individual level. With the security on the farms in question, even mobilizing local investment becomes quite a challenge.
To try to improve efficiency, Zimbabwe has also put a limit on farm sizes, and in July it agreed to pay $3.5 billion to former white farmers as compensation for infrastructure improvements on the land as part of efforts to win back international support. Farai Mwakatuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
The African Union is set to discuss the launch of a payment system for the long-awaited African Continental Free Trade Area. But the outbreak of the coronavirus presents a hurdle at this crucial launch point, with traditional cross-border trade routes facing the pressure of extended delays. Truckers at Kenya's western border crossing into Uganda and the Great Lakes region have been waiting for days before clearance, exposing the challenges of the continent's free trade area set to start in January 2021.
A queue of lorries snaked down the narrow tarmac road, stretching back as far as the eye can see, on both sides of a sign welcoming you to Busia, the gateway of East and Central Africa. Busia is part of a transport corridor that extends from Kenya's port of Mombasa into landlocked nations in East and Central Africa, including Rwanda, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Before the pandemic, it took truckers a few hours to cross over. Now, it takes days.
Since I came here, today is the third day here. We have been here on this queue now. And the queue moves at night a bit, but during the day it stops completely, it stalls. The vehicles are like this. And where we are here, as you can see, there is no sanitary equipment.
To cross over, drivers need to show a negative COVID-19 test taken in the previous 14 days, failure to which they must submit to testing at the border and wait for 2 days for the results. The added time comes out of their pay.
I'm hanging less money because if they give you, let me say that's just like $400 to go to Mombasa, and you stay here for so long, you spend a lot of money for eating, yeah, even drinking.
Kenya's Finance Minister Ukur Yatani said the snarl-ups would ease once the approach road to Busia was turned into a dual carriageway, a project due for completion by 2022.
And you sleep on the tracks because they are not allowed you to go outside because of corona. So they want you to stay on the track and you cook on the track. But the toilet, you just arrange yourself. You can go to the petrol station or anywhere.
Over 50 African nations are due to operationalize the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement in January. The date was pushed back by 6 months due to the pandemic, and the increased border checks in the interim have also added to the weight. The ACFTA Secretariat had no immediate comment about the increased border checks. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
2 years after construction kicked off, South Africa's Cognos wind farm has now been commissioned to generate energy for commercial purposes. This is despite the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which brought all construction work to a standstill for several months. Lekela is the main investor and project manager for this wind farm that's located in the Northern Cape. Angela Coppola has more on this story.
This was the first completed project in the fourth round of the South African government's renewable energy program, and it came in at $220 million. It will generate enough renewable energy per year to power up 154,000 homes.
The grid connection between our project and Eskom's grid has been what we call self-built, so we build it ourselves. Typically in the past it has been Eskom doing this, and here in this particular project we have been doing that in order to make sure that we de-risk the project, can do it ourselves. Of course we have the knowledge in-house to do that, and that helped us being very fast in the implementation of the project.
The project is managed by Lekela, an international firm that has built up a team of local specialists to manage the entire build and operate process.
We split the contract into the wind turbine and generator on one side, and then what we call the balance of plant on the other side. And the reason for doing that is, you can do this in South Africa simply because you have the necessary companies who have the necessary expertise to do it.
One of the key parts of the construction process in the past was that most of the high-tech equipment for the turbines was imported. This negatively affected the local content requirement imposed by Eskom.
This time we made sure that the transformers, which is really a critical part of a wind turbine, are actually procured in local factories here in South Africa, and that pushed that percentage to 49%. So the only things currently which are outside of Africa, procured outside of Africa, is really the blades and the nacelles.
This is a long-term project, anything between 20 and 25 years, and it's important for Lekela to show their commitment.
And so the ED, economic development, and the SED, the socio-economic development for Africa, is very, very important and for us in order to make sure that we get actually a social license to operate within the community.
With the construction phase of the project now out of the way, it's down to the long-term provision of energy onto that Eskom grid. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And we are not done just yet. We've got some amazing stories coming your way. Here's a look at what's ahead. Egypt holds second celebration of ancient art of traditional puppetry. Welcome back to Africa Live. The second Egyptian Aragouz Festival is underway at the ancient mansion Beit al-Senari in Cairo. The Aragouz is a traditional puppet figure dressed in red invented by Egyptians to ridicule situations comically. The festival is organized by Wamda Troupe for Aragouz and Shadow Puppets. The festival is part of the initiative to preserve Aragouz after it was recognized by UNESCO in 2018. Yasser Hakim with the details.
A popular show for children that dates back at least 6 centuries. The puppet, known here as El Aragouz, with its famous red attire, has always had its followers.
I like the Aragouz. I learn from the stories he talks about and I enjoy his shows. After watching the Aragouz, I go back home and write my own stories, just like him. Stories about kingdoms and good fighting evil.
It's a lot of fun and makes me laugh. When I am tired of studying, I like to take a break by going to watch the Aragouz. I enjoy it. At the same time, I learn more about our culture and history from his stories.
In Egypt, the Aragouz is not just a puppet show. It's much more, a part of the traditions and heritage. The UNESCO has recognized it as one of the most important Egyptian elements.
The puppet show has been inspiring people for hundreds of years with stories about the victory of good over evil. And in history, he has influenced politics and rebellions against tyrants. Only 19 of his stories remain. I collected them in an archival book. This book and a study I submitted have led to the UNESCO recognition of the puppet.
In the last 2 decades, the puppet has been neglected by children in favor of TV shows and the internet. The Wamda Troupe has dedicated its efforts to preserve and spread this puppet globally. They have performed in countries like Spain, Italy, France, Mauritania, and Tunisia.
We performed 60 shows in 30 countries without any financial aid. It's just from our own revenue. More importantly, we established workshops to create new generations of talented, well-trained performers who will take over the mantle and keep this heritage and tradition alive.
One of the troupe members is Chico, who plays the puppet.
I joined the troupe 15 years ago, but I have been a puppeteer since I was 10 years old, which makes it 56 years in this profession. I'm always happy when I hear people laughing and enjoying the show. My pleasure is derived from the happiness of others when they watch the show. That is what has kept me in this for the most of my life.
After the end of the festival in Cairo, the troupe is planning a tour to perform around the country. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Renowned South African artist Esther Mshlangu has launched the largest solo exhibition of her career. This serves as a portrait into her life as she celebrates her 85th birthday and her Isi Ndebele culture. The artist has had a Rolls Royce named after her, exhibited in museums around the world, and collaborated with prominent people globally. Her current showcase is being displayed in one of South Africa's leading galleries in Johannesburg.
Dr. Esther Mahlangu is well known for her bold, large-scale contemporary paintings, paintings that reference her isiNdebele culture. A globally acclaimed visual artist, Dr. Mahlangu is celebrating her birthday month by launching the largest solo exhibition she has ever produced. The exhibition, curated by Ruzi Rusike, presents a comprehensive body of artworks created over 3 years in the bold geometric style for which Dr. Mahlangu is so globally acclaimed.
So this is Ma'am Esther's largest exhibition, hence the title Esther Mahlangu 85, and it's simply to celebrate her birthday, but also her journey as an artist, because most of the time when you actually see Ma'am Esther's works, it's always within a group exhibition or a museum exhibition, but this is the first time it's actually exhibited in this kind of format. And for a lot of people, it's the first time actually seeing her works, whereas most of the time they would either see her mural works or they would see it online. So this is also an opportunity to understand why she is Esther Mahlangu and why she's celebrated as this national treasure.
Over the years, Ma'am Esther, as she is fondly known, has integrated the isiNdebele cultural and visual traditions into high art circles and popular culture. Most recently, Mahlangu collaborated with Rolls-Royce on their Phantom model, transforming the vehicle into one they dubbed the Mahlangu. She's also collaborated with BMW, putting an African twist to the German luxury vehicles. Her incredible skill is on display here.
So we're showcasing a full body of work, whether it's painting, sculpture, pottery, etc. We're showcasing it all. And why we're doing that is for audience to get a sneak peek to understanding what it is when we say Esther Mahlangu 85. So it's actually wonderful because we have an installation of 85 works by Ma'am Esther, and those works are 20 by 30. And then you get to see the gestures in which you can actually witness in the bigger paintings and even in the sculptures that we have presented.
Rusike says the 85-year-old artist continues to be daring in her art making.
The border between traditional and contemporary is one that she's not scared of crossing, and as she's been renowned for being the first artist or the first Ndebele artist who actually took the mural painting and transferred it to canvas, because for her, the plane on which she paints on is extremely important, but now the pigment which she paints on is also now an important factor.
This exhibition presents a rare opportunity for South African art collectors to experience her solo and to acquire artworks by Dr. Esther Mahlangu, as the vast majority of her paintings are purchased by international collectors. Yudison Jomelo for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And we are about to get started with your sport in just a moment.